The world of personal relationships has changed dramatically in the last 50 years. That would be approximately 1976. We just heard about a story that happened with our country 50 years ago, and this was when our country was celebrating its 200-year anniversary. It was the year I bought my Steinway grand piano, and I was going to become a concert pianist. I had already been working as a hospital pharmacist for a few years, and things were getting a bit routine. I believed I needed a new adventure. Can we ever have enough newness? That is when I decided to become a tap dancer with 10 to 15-year-old girls from school. It was so energizing that I felt like a teenager again. As if tap was not enough, I had to enroll in ballet, jazz dancing, as well to promote my ability to maintain balance, grace, and even master those turns without getting carsick. I would spend hours in the garage building my stamina, practicing the routine for the week, and I was a sweaty, slopping mess most of the time after work. I became very interested in developing my style and rhythm. Yes, America was the land of the free. However, my husband did not appreciate being abandoned that much. We had to split up, not because we didn't love each other, but we did not share a common purpose as a couple. I was still individuating and relishing my childhood. That got me into the early 1980s. As the 80s unfolded, I kept working. I opened my own drugstore, then traveled around the country and world as a drug sales rep, not those drugs, legitimate pharmaceuticals, and finally got a degree in business, an MBA. One of the biggest challenges was dating. In those days, going online and chatting was unheard of. You had to meet someone in person, meet for coffee, or something that pretended you were a good catch. Computers were barely in the gestational phase. It took another 30 years or so before people began to meet online, develop digital relationships, and eventually meet in person, get married, or not. If one did get married, it seldom would last. It took a while to develop one's picker. That was my problem, my personal problem. I finally thought I had met Mr. Right because he was a minister. That turned out to be a major disaster because when it came to talking about biblical principles, he would always play the devil's advocate. And he was good. Unfortunately, he had a serious drinking problem which took him down. To watch him do this to himself was impossible. I was too busy working to pay the bills that I could not afford to stay at home and babysit. After that chapter came another 20 years of technological advancement. Now, the whole getting to know you audience is online 24 hours a day worldwide. The most difficult part is being close when we are thousands of miles apart, different time zones, and even cultural strangers. But there is hope because we have a tried and true love that lives on digital time. Yes, Lots of affectionate names, kind and caring salutations and requests for, would you believe, a policy for jealousy protection. Have you ever heard of anything like that? Now, that comes from the other side of the distance barrier because he does not realize how selfish I am with my time. Having one boyfriend is already a major sacrifice for a person who prefers to live a monastic life. More than one source of communication might as well be an overdose of social interaction. Regardless, I had to promise I would give him at least one morning and one evening update on my professional progress at becoming technologically astute. Recently, I had to explain that I would be faithful with my communications as both of us agreed not to make any rash decisions or commitments. I clearly spelled out that I was at least 7 months older than his mother, that if more than 2 days went by without a text from me, then most likely I had died. He, of course, had to assure me that his interest was to enjoy my heart of kindness, sense of humor, even though I lacked technological astuteness. Digital dating an engineer has its intimidations. Now, I got wrapped up in this conversation, and it's still an enigma. Vocal variety plays no role at all, but the intention rests on descriptive words. It does serve a nascent role. However, the reward is a comforting connection that is not based on physical appearance, social status, or income bracket. It represents a heart-to-heart connection that serves a moment-by-moment reward of warmth, caring, sharing, and listening digitally. It also reminds me of the way being sent off to war in earlier years of the last century created an opportunity to connect with small letters of snail mail. Lots of time to reflect, grow, and pursue interests with immediate acquaintances without being dedicated to a long-term goal. Lots of time to rediscover oneself without restrictions. Yes, digital dating is a reality of today. However, we have always had the opportunity to connect in a way that promises new aliveness, experience, and imagination. It still, bottom line, depends on how one chooses to experience newness with expression or not. The choice is ultimately ours and in time. If we continue to choose, we get to decide where we go and when. What might be needed to let that experience of newness reign in your life?